It's super easy to be intimidated by that and be like, there's no way I can't. These guys are posting all the time. Look at that artwork, all of that. So it's really easy to come to the conclusion of I just shouldn't be there.
Fellow Awesomeologists, to the premiere episode of Season 3 of Awesomeology. My name is Sue.
And I'm Ben, and in this episode, we are talking about myth-busting social media, which we're super excited to talk about. And before we dive in, quick little update from the team here. You are hearing a different voice, and yes, that is intentional. Your ears are working just fine. My name is Ben, and I'm the new co-host of Awesomeology. Super excited to be working with Sue on the podcast.
Wait, pause for applause. Yay!
Yay! Ben's here.
That actually is how Ben insists he enters any room.
Right.
And that's...
If there's not applause, I'll just keep exiting and coming back in until it happens. It's very
tedious.
tiring. It's
very
exhausting.
tedious.
Working with me is so exhausting. Oh my gosh. But yeah, other than that, other details about the show, like anything Awesomeology, we're working through the details and learning new things and trying new things. So we're excited to have you all along on the journey as we continue to grow and shape something awesome in the podcast.
Hence the name.
Right.
Right. So yes, welcome, Ben. It is exciting to have a new co-host. We wish my previous co-host very, very well, who has moved on to arguably a better boss.
Right.
Let's just say that for what it is.
There's no doubt about that.
There's no doubt about that. And so Vince is doing well, and Ben is no stranger to our podcast. He was our guest several times, so he knows the ropes as well as we do, considering we make up rules as we go along.
Right.
And that is an excellent segue to talking about the internet, is it not? Speaking of making up rules as you go along.
Yeah, the internet and social media.
Right,
right.
Right. So today we are talking about myth busting, some myths from social media. And I am excited about the two that I pulled out of my little brain just because they are two of my favorite that seem to swirl in the ether of things that I hear from people. So let's jump in. The first myth I want to bust is you don't need to do anything on social media ever.
Ooh.
I know, right?
There are people that believe that, right?
There are definitely people that believe that. And it is interesting because that is possibly true for some people.
Right.
It is absolutely possible that you don't need to do anything on social media.
Certainly possible.
As people who put food on the table for other people doing social media, we're likely going to argue that point a little bit.
They're all wrong.
Get it together. But there is, I think, where that myth sort of originates from is this idea that people can't see, maybe people, especially running I think tiny businesses, haven't taken the time to look at what the benefit would be to doing something super, super basic and doing I guess what you could refer to as a maintenance level Instagram or Facebook or just really whatever works for their particular audience, and having something out on the internet purely to be able to let people see who you are, where you are, and let them know you are open and doing business. I think that's the minimum
for sure
that social media can do for you.
Right.
And if not everyone has to be a Wendy's or a Kentucky Fried Chicken or some of these big brands that are, really active and somewhat notorious on social media. But the fact is that if your consumers are my age or Ben's age or the people younger than Ben, there is a certain subset of consumers who the first thing, if they hear your name, the first thing they're going to do is Google you. And if they can't find evidence of you anywhere, then you're probably not getting their money.
Right.
Yeah.
That could be a problem.
Yeah.
Well, let's go back to the maybe one of the origins of this myth, and using your example of the tiny business, right? The tiny business person, maybe if it's a one-person operation or limited help beyond that, right? I think that sometimes the reason for believing this myth is simply just a lack of time to have any understanding of it, right? As soon as you start thinking about social media, the other examples you gave, you start seeing things like Wendy's and Quick Trip and all of these, great examples of people doing it and standing out and really making a brand and a presence for themselves on social media. So it's super easy to be intimidated by that and be like, there's no way I can't, these guys are posting all the time. Look at that artwork, all of that. So it's really easy to come to the conclusion of, I just shouldn't be there.
Right.
I can't compete with that. And, there's some partial truth to that. Like, yeah, you probably can't compete with that. And that's okay. That's the thing. But then back to your point, the risk that you run with that is that, zero discoverability for that potential new customer, client, member, whatever it might be. Right. So yeah, we're going to have to go ahead and bust this one super quick.
We are definitely going to bust. We are going to, I am calling it 99% busted.
Right.
Because I do think there are businesses that can live a pretty healthy life as long as they're putting together their Google page. Like
sure.
You have to be somewhere.
Right.
They have to be able to find you. And if we can't find you, then, I hope you have great word of mouth.
Right. Yeah.
Because that's going to be your bread and butter.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting and kind of funny, the idea of word of mouth, right? But the truth, though, is that there are plenty of businesses that absolutely thrive on that word of mouth, small town feel, those, that tight community of patrons that they have, and that works. That works, and that's okay. It's just those are pretty rare exceptions to the general rule of you need to be findable online and elsewhere. So
right, and all of that. Anytime you're thriving, and I don't want to say this to panic people, but anytime you're thriving, I think it benefits businesses to think of that as a temporary situation. You don't know when that thriving ends. Mm-hmm. When your customer base, you think about thinking about Wisconsin Rapids, and I hate to invoke the specter of that paper mill in Wisconsin Rapids, but to say, we're thriving, we have this great word of mouth, and then a big employer like that is gone, then you can very, very quickly stop thriving.
Right.
So mostly busted, 99% busted.
Right.
But we'll grant you there's some possibility.
It's a very scientific conclusion we just came to.
Yes. Mostly busted. Boom.
Awesome.
Okay.
Well, great segue into my first myth that I brought, which was you should only try to get fans and followers that will become customers.
Ooh.
Right? Good one, right?
You know what? That hurts me on the business level. And it also, as a human being who wants everyone to love me, that hurts me on that level too.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I just think, you can't help but think like that, especially if you've seen any proof of a follower becoming a customer, right? It's really easy to get sucked into, and maybe even almost borderline addicting to think that's the way we need to do things now. And that's going to be a main source of new prospects or leads or whatever for me, if you've seen any instant success with something like a social media audience. So while sure, that might be ideal, is to turn every follower, every person that sees you on social media or online anywhere into a customer. so many benefits to put content out there and have your message also invite people that aren't going to be a customer, at least right now, and maybe even ever, because we know that those people also talk to other people that may become your customers. They're connected, there are other businesses, there may be even competition. So there's lots of reasons why you could make the case to talk to people that you might never see $1 from, or
Right.
sell that ebook, or get them to read that thing, whatever it is. So,
And do you think maybe, Ben, that if you start this really aggressive strategy of we have to be talking only to our customers and it's all about conversions, that you get this funnel mindset and that affects the quality of what you can put out there?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, bye.
Good talk. Yeah, no, I mean, I really think again, it's just one of those like traps that you can fall into with social media or sales, right? Is you stop looking at an audience or a potential customer or a follower as a person, and you go into that, funnel mentality, let's call it. We should probably trademark that.
Yes.
Funnel
I'm sorry. That's ours now. And we
Let
own
the
that.
record show.
Funnel mentality.
But, and of course, from a, healthy sales department or whatever, thinking, whether it's sales funnel or sales flywheel, whatever.
I've never heard of the flywheel.
You've
That
never heard of
sounds
the flywheel?
way more dangerous than a sales funnel.
Yeah, certainly more dangerous and a lot faster paced. I suppose. Yeah, no. Whatever it is that is guiding your strategy, all good stuff. But you have to remember that the things that go into the funnel are people at the end of the day, and it's really important to make sure that that your content speaks to more than just that ideal person that's going to wind up making a purchase from you.
Right. Well, and particularly, I think we're seeing this, certainly I think it's increased really, really rapidly over the last year, but we were seeing this trend of people being on social media and human beings in general, being more interested in who your brand is, not what your brand sells, but what your brand does and your brand's values and how you're contributing to your local community, to the world as a whole. And there are so many businesses, some of the businesses we work for included, that they're not putting that story out there because they're so focused on conversions, on getting customers. And so you're not talking about the collection for the food pantry or the thing that you did for, an individual family. So I really don't need to tell you examples of charity, but here's what I'm doing. That, and it's really, those are the stories. Those kinds of stories are the things that make people buy from a business. Like seeing an ethical business is where people want to be, not someone who is using marketing mind tricks to get them to reel them in and get them in the funnel as quickly as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and just to look at this fairly and objectively before we debunk this myth, because we are scientists, right?
Right.
This is a very scientific method.
But we can also partially debunk it.
Right.
So we have that.
Yeah. There is, there's no denying that there is a case for the marketing mind trick, right? And the promotion that is just for that straight up impulse purchase, whatever the strategy is behind it, and that works. And there's times that works, and that's okay. But you just can't forget about this whole other group of people that aren't your customers, that are talking to people that could potentially be your customers, or maybe just aren't your customer right now. I mean, and that's one of the, greatest mysteries or challenges of marketing, is how we can wrap our heads around what it's the value in talking to someone that's going to eventually become your customer, and you maybe just don't know it yet, or you can't prove it, can't quantify it, right? It's that that high schooler that you're planting the seeds for when they finally become a home buyer or finally go to college or whatever it might be. So just because you can't measure that thing super accurately doesn't mean that it's a thing that you shouldn't do.
Right.
And the thing I'm talking about is
right.
talking to non-customers on social media, which I'm calling it busted, man.
Busted. Are we going 100% busted on
I
that
say
one?
100%.
All right. I'm with you. Bold, but let's do it.
Yeah. Well, like I said, very scientific method today.
Extremely.
So we got to make a statement.
If you just want to move those beakers over there, and then we can get to the next solution. I don't know science terms. Okay. So speaking of audience and sort of along that flavor, and actually echoing directly back to my first one. So first myth we mostly busted was you don't have to be on social media. And now I'm going to flip the script, and say, I'm going to bust the myth that you have to be on social media. You have to be everywhere. And you're not doing social media unless you are tweeting at a Quick Trip level. And if you are a business person who is not paying attention to Quick Trip's Twitter, check it out.
Right.
Because they've got game for sure.
So good.
Yeah.
So good.
So, as you said, one of the things you said was it can be really intimidating to look at those big businesses and say, I can't even play in that space. And then to have people telling you, well, you've got to play in that space. You have to figure that out. You have to get out there and do it because that's the only way, that's the only way you're going to get customers now is social media. Mm-hmm. And I am going to let me spoil the ending of this and say, I'm going to mostly bust this one.
Yeah.
But there's some truth, but only a grain of truth in needing to be there. I think you have to, coming back to that idea that you have to be findable, you have to be discoverable. If we put quotes around have to do as a business is you have to understand who your audience is that you want to talk to. You have to have something to say to them. And then you have to find the right place to go for that. You don't have to go on every platform. You don't have to take your teenager's advice and hurry up and get on TikTok. You don't, all of those things that I think you literally can find quote unquote advice. If you said, if your brother-in-law's accountant said to you, you have to be on TikTok right now. You could go Google, do I have to be on TikTok right now? And you could find advice for, and you could find advice against. The most important part is to know who you need to talk to and what you need to say. And then find them on social media. So I think a lot of the businesses we talk to and in the businesses we promote ourselves, Facebook seems like this really nice, natural place because it still has the lion's share of the market.
Right.
And it has certain of those audiences, certain demographics are growing on Facebook, even as everyone's saying you have to get on TikTok and if you have to get Gen Z. And depending on your business, you don't not have to get Gen Z.
Right.
But it's just such a nice Facebook to me is such a nice sort of starter social media because it really is the spot where you can reach almost everyone. Gen Z is still using Facebook. We have a growing audience of baby boomers on Facebook. And then everyone in between, those numbers just keep growing and growing and growing, and the market share just keeps getting bigger. And it supports a lot of ways of getting your message out. So it supports advertising, if that is what your strategy is. It supports really long form posts. If that is what, I'm thinking of, like a Penzi Spices is the one I think of, like super long for nobody else is posting like that. Right. It supports images, it supports video, just everything that you might be able to easily and organically do and bring to social media. Facebook can support it in some way. Now, are you always going to reach the people you want to reach in an organic way? Nope. Right. And you probably need to use, you probably have to pay, just like every other advertising, you probably have to pay to play in that sandbox. But are you going to get a nice cross section of people? Yes. Mm-hmm. Now, when you start looking at, well, if you have Facebook, you have to do this other thing. You have to do, when we talk to people, we often say a nice natural place to go from Facebook is Instagram because they're really closely connected. It's really easy to cross post. All of that stuff is great. But the truth is Instagram is this whole different beast. Right. And if you don't have a strategy, this is fun because I'm looking you right in the eye and like preaching exactly what we preach to other people, and you're agreeing with me, which is cool.
You're welcome.
Thank you. But if you don't have a strategy for Instagram, which relies on beautiful eye-catching images, then just back away slowly. Like you're not hurting anybody's feelings if you can't play in that space.
Right.
If you don't have a strategy for Twitter that relies on the kind of like really sharp writing that Twitter calls for, just, don't. Or, there's a place for putting yourself in some of these spaces, Twitter, Instagram, where that's not your A game, right? Where you can bring something to it. You can be there for people. But if you're not going in those spaces with your A game, don't expect that to be where you get most of your leads.
Right. I think the conclusion that we're coming to here is you should do the things that you're prepared for, that you have the strategy for, that you have the time and talent, whatever it is that you need to do that and do it well, especially if it aligns with a target market and things like that. Not necessarily a reason to completely stay away from these other channels, right? Especially, the example you gave of Facebook and Instagram. There's sometimes where just posting the same exact thing on both of them might make perfectly logical sense. So why not be in both places? At the same time, though, you can't do that with everything, and it's not best practice to just post everything that you post on Facebook on Instagram, right? So knowing the space, knowing the audience that's in that space is super important. And it doesn't mean that it has to be absolutely perfect every time either. So I think we're making a case for you may be able to steer on the side of being in some places that you're, not crushing, or, it's not, you're not doing 100% the right way. It's okay to start somewhere, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe baby step into those places and then shift your content, your message around to exactly that channel or that audience. But if that gives you any hesitation, any pause, or you're not ready to take those baby steps, or maybe most importantly, if you don't ever see yourself doing those things the right way or developing a strategy around it, then
just don't
stay in your lane.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't mean to say like,
so
that's
rude.
Yeah, it's so rude. It's so harsh. I don't mean to sound so harsh, but seriously, like, it's okay if all you do is Facebook and you just do Facebook really well. Do Facebook and do Facebook really well. It's all right.
I'm going to test out a football analogy on you here.
Oh boy, here we go.
So like if you can bring your varsity team to Facebook, right?
Yeah. And
they're playing, I don't know, I'm almost losing my analogy because I'm so excited to give a part-time football coach this analogy. You bring your varsity team to Facebook and you send the JV to Instagram. The point is that JV team is learning and growing.
Exactly.
And moves into varsity.
Love it.
Thank you.
Nice job.
That's not bad, right?
No, that was good. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you.
Just send the JV team to the Wolves. It's fine. They'll be fine.
They'll be okay.
They'll be better because of it. No, it's a great analogy. Well done.
Thank you. Thanks, Coach.
So do we need to clarify our status of that myth? Is it officially busted, or
it is officially, I think it's officially busted.
Okay.
You don't have to be everywhere, and you don't have to be there unless you know what the heck you're doing.
Got it.
That's just good life advice.
Right.
If you don't know what the heck you're doing, just please stop.
Stay home. Yeah. All right. Well, as you were going through that myth, there were a couple times you were almost spoiling my last one.
Spoilers.
I'm so glad that you kept moving, because mine was the last one I have is only young people use social media. And so going back to the last one that we talked about, and you talked about some demographics and audiences growing and stuff like that.
Set you up.
You just you set me up, and I'm just spiking it down right now. So perfect. But I bust all the way on this one for sure. Only young people may use certain social media much more than other demographics, for sure. TikTok, the example that you gave, right? But we also know that there's plenty of grown bleep adults that are that are on TikTok too. So, and the same thing goes for each of them, right? Facebook is the one that, we're definitely seeing older demographics continue to, come on and interact and engage more and more there. So that's definitely not a space that's only for young people, for sure. And depending on which young people you're talking to, they might say that Facebook is for air quotes, old people, right? Yeah. So, and that's just another thing that depending on the time that you have to completely understand it, and the time that you have to actually post and engage and develop a strategy around social media, you can pay attention to your demographics and see who you're talking to, and so you might go in with some assumptions. You might go in with some goals for the kind of people that you're trying to target, but that can all change really quickly based on how your message is received and how it's shared and stuff like that. And you might find something quite different than what you had initially thought. And we're seeing that, across every channel, that this whole thing of social media, which, it's so interesting to think back to when it all kind of started and how it wasn't that long ago, right? In the grand scheme of things, how it's really changed, and how I think we're at a point now where, sure, there's certainly still some people that are just, anti-devices, anti-social media, and they're not there, good for them. Somehow they've found a way to stay off of it, right?
Think how well they must sleep at night.
God, they must sleep so well, right? But we know that there's not too many of those people out there. Pretty much everybody's on something, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, all these, so, right? So I don't mean to end the myth busting on such an easy one.
Right.
But I think it's an important assumption to make sure that you understand, that if you're trying to reach out to a certain demographic, and that demographic is older, and we don't even need to define what older is, it's likely that they're somewhere on social media. Right. And so understanding where they might be and then developing a strategy around that's really important.
Yes. I have so many thoughts on that. Number one, I want to say, especially in the credit union space, that is the thing that I think, and not to date myself, but being able to remember being in the credit union movement at a time where people are like, do we need a website? To watch, that has certainly evolved, but there's still a lot of people holding on to that myth. And I think part of what makes them cling to it, circling back to something you said about, those single person shops, and, not really being able to see how you can manage that. But I think in a lot of those spaces, people cling to the idea that, our audience isn't there and it's only for young people, so we don't have to do anything with it, because there's this unspoken thing of, once we start doing something with it, we have to manage it. And what if people say mean things to us? Right? And I can personally attest that if people say mean things to you, you just take a deep breath. You thank them for their input, and you just keep moving on.
Right.
And I think it's really easy to make that excuse and say, well, those aren't the people we're talking to, so I just don't need to do anything with it.
Yeah.
The other thing that is coming to my mind, speaking of this myth that only young people are using this spot and they're not using that spot, whatever. If you have not seen Mandy Patinkin and his wife on TikTok, actually, Mandy Patinkin and Henry Winkler just got TikTok. And these are some of the most delightful things in the world. So those are some great examples of people who are older and using social media to great effect.
Right. There we go. Busted.
Busted.
Big time.
So that was just 4. That was just 4 myths.
Right.
And there are a lot more myths.
So many more.
And that is why we are excited. We actually probably could have done this at the top and then repeated it. It's fine. These are show notes. I don't need to give them out loud. But we're excited because we have an event coming up on the 9th of February.
Yeah.
We have a free virtual event. And we have been doing sort of piloting and trying, just like we're trying out some things on the podcast. We're trying out some things in virtual meetings. We're doing a thing called Connections. And in our Connections event, which are free and casual and very fun, and we invite the people that we think would like to just get together and talk, we are going to talk about myth-busting social media there and get some. We're asking people as they are registering, tell us some of your myths, tell us some of the things that you believe to be absolutely true. And maybe we're not going to get to bust those. Maybe we're going to say, yep, you are right.
Yep.
Moving on.
Or we don't know.
Right. But that's going to be a really fun conversation. February, did I say 9th?
You said 9th.
I said 9th.
Yes.
That seems accurate. And 10 o'clock, and we will make sure to include a link with the show on the blog so that you can register for that if you're interested. That's going to be a fun time.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
Everyone is welcome from anywhere.
Right. Yep. Think of it as time at the virtual coffee shop, just talking about myth busting social media.
Right.
Super casual.
Very casual.
Awesome.
Excellent. So we cranked through it. We had 4. We don't want to spoil any more. Let's move to wrap up. So we would like to leave you every time we sit down to visit with just a little something to check out, some recommendation, nothing super, super formal, because I think you'll find there's not a lot formal about this podcast. So we're just going to bring you a couple of things that we have seen in the universe: books, blogs, podcasts, videos, movies, TV, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And my recommendation, and I'm going to cheat because I had to Google it to make sure I didn't get it wrong. My recommendation is, if you have not seen it, look for the video of Youth Poet Laureate Amanda Gorman reading her poem, The Hill We Climb. She read it at the inauguration, and this is not a political statement, but it was a beautiful poem. She's a promising young poetess.
Promising young human being, my goodness.
Yes, right? And it made you feel really great as an American, and brought so much hope, and it was quite lovely. So check it out. The Hill We Climb. Amanda Gorman is the poet, and it is only everywhere on the internet.
Right.
If you see a meme of Bernie Sanders sitting in a chair with mittens, turn left and you will see Amanda Gorman.
Right. Yeah, no, I super highly recommend. It was amazing to watch. And I mean, if you can listen to it for sure. But if you can catch a video of it, for sure, check out the video. And I'm honestly even curious to watch it on mute, because her hand gestures, the way she tells a story with her body as she's reading the poem is just amazing, So I don't think I'm actually going to take myself up on the offer to watch it on mute, because I just know how good it is to actually listen to it too. But seriously, an excellent listening and visual experience too. She did a fantastic job. Unreal.
Yes. And 22 years old.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's not talk about what we were doing at 22.
Probably not.
Yikes.
And fun fact about that, the ring that she was wearing, this is the thing I heard in an interview, was a caged bird in honor of Maya Angelou,
Wow.
which I thought was cool.
That's cool. Yeah.
And it also was about the size of my fist. So it was very hard to miss.
Right. She was ready for anything.
Right.
That's it?
That's it. That's my recommendation.
All right.
Do you have one?
Nope.
Okay. Well, that one, I think people, so your half of that recommendation should be after you have watched that video, like just go and sit and be quiet for a minute and think about it.
Yeah.
Because it took everything out of me when I watched that.
For sure. No, I mean, really though, that's, I don't know if you're kidding or not, but seriously, I think that's a thing that, not to be super prescriptive, but a thing that we could all use right now is some time to just sit and absorb some things, right? I feel like when everything COVID started, there was this great pause that everybody was talking about. And I don't know if I ever experienced that pause. So, maybe now that we're far enough into this thing and maybe we're feeling the light at the end of the tunnel, why not use an awesome opportunity like Amanda Gorman's speech to soak that in and then just pause for a second, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll try and take my own medicine on that one.
Good idea. Yeah. Good idea. That's a thing to talk about someday because as a group of people who just kept working,
right?
Just shifted everything, and we're like, and some of us like, oh, what if we worked more hours?
Right. Yeah. There's an idea. All right. Well, Sue mentioned some show notes.
Yes. So as usual, if we have anything to share, we will share it below. So I know for sure we're going to share a link so that you can register for Connections, Mythbusting Social Media, coming up on, we're still saying February 9th, but you'll know when you hit that link if that's right. And we have an article with some more myth-busting social media stuff that we can share and anything else. And maybe I'll also be really proactive and find a link to that video of Amanda Gorman, and
cool.
Then you can check that out. And then a meditation app. And then that will just be the total package for people.
Perfect. All set. Awesome. Well, thank you, friends, for tuning in. This is Sue and Ben, your self-proclaimed professors of awesomeology, reminding you that life is awesome if you make it awesome. We'll see you next time.